Hey all, Taves here, back playing some more Planet Zoo, and welcome back to Tiguidou Zoo. So it's been a while again, it's always a while, isn't it? I know, I'm sorry, terrible at this whole YouTube thing. So, we are, as you'll notice from the thumbnail and the little intro and stuff there, we are jumping back. I've done that thing again, where I've jumped back in time. Look at all of the big empty spaces in Tiguidou. So I have jumped back to a point at which Seal Beach was new to Tiguidou Zoo. So this is right back when we first dropped it in here. And I haven't really shown you anything since then because I've been sort of gently tinkering away with it over a while. Yeah, it didn't feel like it really fit in. I like this a lot. You guys seem to like this a lot when I first did it, but I think it all needs a bit of a rejig. You see all the paths are all a bit weird and it doesn't kind of fit in very much anymore. And if it's not integrated to the rest of the zoo. So obviously this is where Penguin Point and everything is now. So without further ado, let's jump into the speed build and I'll meet you over there. So first things first, this whole stadium area. So I kind of like this when I built it. I think it probably needed to be simplified down quite a lot, but also it was built before we got any of the educator speaking, speaker functions, sort of educator talks function. So when I built this, there was no kind of stadium seating thing in the game. So all of that I kind of need to accommodate into this. It's also, you can see it's kind of a bit of a, it's a one way in, one way out sort of thing. So kind of all that needs to be fixed up. And I also just felt like it needed to kind of be simplified down quite a lot. Partly the story that I've kind of told myself is that we are kind of at a later stage in the zoo's history, and the zoo's been around for a bit longer, and some of these things have been kind of changed and simplified. But the cover, the rain cover that I had over here, or the shade that you saw previously on this, I kind of liked still, but I think probably was a little bit too much for what is a fairly small scale habitat and a fairly small number of seats in here. So what you've seen me do so far is it's always the way when you've got a blueprint that's got water in it. When you drop it back into a space to try and use, you kind of end up with the habitat. The terrain all needs to be kind of changed and moved around. So you've seen me kind of drop in a path, flatten it all out, trying to get actually here a use of 3 of these seating areas. It kind of ends up looking like I've used them, but 2 of them are functional, and the third one isn't functional. I'll probably talk about this when we get the educator in, but yeah, just trying to make this feel a little bit more realistic, and obviously trying to utilise the functions in the game. At this stage, I'm trying to get a path in up there, thinking that, oh, cool, as soon as I can actually place the stadium seating, that will allow it to work. So, yeah, kind of got it to place in there, and it looks good. But as I said, we'll talk about kind of the limitations of the system that I didn't realise existed until I did this. So yeah, trying to sort of trim out this edge here. So we've ended up with this kind of upper floor and then lower floor. A lot of the actual kind of pathway and the beach bit itself gets kind of simplified quite a bit. So one of the problems I definitely had, as you'll know if you've ever tried to kind of do any kind of sheer curbs or sheer edges of terrain, that you can't do a sort of sharp edge. So you'll see that what I ended up with is a sort of sloped edge down there. So just brought in some extra concrete bits to try and smooth that off. I ended up with this kind of extra little section, and I thought actually that makes quite a good section for like wheelchair viewing or the sort of disabled viewing area. So yeah, thought that kind of triggered this thought of like, okay, well, how do we get access through this space? End up taking a lot of this out. The fence system that I've got there actually all gets replaced. That tree coming out, and so I needed a little kind of path here and a way up to this elevated area. Kind of not big enough, that space, for another seating block, and I'd already kind of worked out that the stadium seating at up at that level wasn't really going to function. So I thought, well, why not just add this extra kind of wheelchair access area? So yeah, more of the concrete going in, and then I thought, well, how are they going to get up there? Maybe we'll just put a little, kind of construct ourselves a little, like a wheelchair lift. And at this stage you can see a lot of the aesthetic of Seal Beach. This particular bit of Seal Beach is all actually fairly similar, but adding this lift in kind of ends up changing a lot of the aesthetic, because you can still see all the Seal Beach signs and stuff like that down that edge on the right hand side of the screen. But actually ended up using these, I think these slat pieces from the conservation pack. It can end up looking like really kind of good modern bits. Seal Beach has always been slightly different in terms of aesthetic to the rest of Tiguidou. I think it was supposed to always feel a bit like the kind of big budget feature area of the zoo. A lot of the rest of the zoo is quite, I guess, quite sort of modest and small scale in its scope. A lot of the habitats are quite small. Seal Beach was always supposed to be their kind of blue chip area. So I built that little tower that the lift's going to go up in, and I've ended up with some of this kind of, this has ended up changing the aesthetic slightly. Wanted to cover all these concrete edges up, so I've sort of doubled up those wall pieces to give them a bit of extra thickness. And it's a good tip just to, always makes the build look slightly better if you kind of trim out the edges with stuff. Decided I had this, you just saw me putting a door in there, but I had this kind of big concrete block then. I thought, well, maybe if I just implied there was some sort of cupboard or storage under there. There's no actual, I don't think I've done anything in that cupboard. I think I left that alone. I think I just decided to leave that alone. So here's the actual, I put the platform down, I put the sort of little tower in, there's a bit of a structure going in. Decided I needed to build a little kind of control for people to have something really simple to make the lift go up and down. So just using the light pieces there and a couple of the little cap bits, and a really simple, like, red makes you go up, green makes you go down. I don't know, something like that. That was the idea. And then I just wanted to stop this from looking like the light, so I just covered that over with some bracket pieces. Little gate so that obviously you kind of wheeled in, or you wheel yourself in there, and then you close this little kind of safety gate behind you, and then that comes up with the lift. Is that what I was doing? Yeah, I think that comes up with the lift. Using some of the mesh pieces. So just thought I'd have this open for now. And so the idea just being, I mean, I've actually spent, I can't remember how much I've talked about this, but I've spent quite a lot of time in Tiguidou making sure that all of it's wheelchair accessible. This is slightly different, a few places where you have to go a slightly different route than the main route, but generally speaking it's all wheelchair accessible. And then this is the second bit really of this build. So a few people have done this before, and I can't remember where it's actually in reference to, but kind of had this little weird space here, wanted a bit of a kind of focal point or a weenie for the park, so decided to build myself a little lighthouse. There's a bunch of lighthouses on the workshop, but and I did actually look at a few of those, and some of them are really amazing builds, but most of them just slightly too big for the space I have. I've got quite a small little space here, and it's kind of, as you can end up seeing, it goes up on a big rock, so it's sort of quite particular scale that I need to use here. So you saw me do the trick where you kind of put a mud pillar down, and then you rotate your pieces around to get the kind of spherical shape, and you can see it's kind of it's slightly angled in, so it's narrower at the top than it is at the bottom. And then I use some of the block pieces, again rotating those around to create sort of stone bottom to it. Created myself a little door, so I wanted something a bit more sort of ornate than the standard doors. So I used one of these window pieces, and actually that's one of those sorts of tricks that if you're building something that's all slightly off scale, so this actually ends up looking bigger than it is because of some of this I can't remember what that's called now, but the sort of visual tricks that you use to to make something look bigger than it actually is. So something like using a window for a door is a bit of a sort of visual trick that you can use to make something look bigger than it is. Creating the actual piece, I mean, it was actually quite a few iterations of this lighthouse because I built it a few times and then wasn't really happy with it. Trying to get the top section right was definitely the biggest challenge. Like the actual kind of main body of the lighthouse is quite easy, but once you get to this top section, yeah, it took me a long time to kind of work out what pieces I wanted. Lots and lots of rotations going on, so you can see a lot of times I've got mud pillars being used, rotating this round to give this all a bit of a trim, and I use one of the fountain pieces to just create that nice little edge, and then again a few more brackets and things to kind of give this a bit more robustness and stuff. And then I needed a cap piece, so actually these worked out really well. I think this was the like parenthesis font piece to create this cap for it, because again everything that was in the game was everything that was more kind of cap shape or dome shape was a little bit too big, and usually they're quite a solid structure. These actually worked out really well, so yeah, putting this little cap on the top, I wanted some sort of decorative piece to go right at the point of this dome, so played around with this again for quite a while. You can see actually in the background that's the capybara and the tapir habitat, so this kind of gives you a bit of a sense of where this is going to go. Again, loads of these little trim pieces getting used. These little brackets are so perfect for this sort of thing, just for like completing the edges and stuff. As you can see, one of my failed previous attempts at building a lighthouse there in the background, just on the left there. Texture was too much in that one, so I'm starting to get there now. I'm starting to get a little bit of a build one again, just kind of experimenting with different shapes to make this a bit more interesting. So you can see I'm kind of placing put that little original ring down, and then I built myself kind of a little block piece out of some of these smaller pieces, and then I'm giving this a bit of a sort of canted shape, so it ends up with a bit of a curved texture, as you can see me kind of doing that. And as long as you keep that mud pillar in place, you can always rotate it around the same central point, so you can always rotate this, which you'll see me do in a second, just to complete this shape. Yeah, there you go. You can see me rotating it around now. So because I've kept that central point of the whole build, I can just rotate this all the way around and you get this nice little slightly different texture there, different shape. And then I put a little art piece in. And actually, when I looked at reference pictures for lighthouses, they quite often just have this kind of central bit where the actual light is, because obviously the light you want to be able to see. In reality, you want to be able to see the light from all directions, so that's what I've done there, is created this like central section, a little point for the light to sit on, and then I end up putting a bit of a frame around it. I can't remember if this is the final result, but a little bit of like some bars around it just to mesh that in. And then this is all got to sit on something, because as you see, this is a really small little space, so gone back to my sandstone texture that I've used in a whole bunch of places in Tiguidou. This is something that you've seen we saw back around the Arctic foxes and the prairie dogs and those sorts of things. So continuing that theme down, and that's actually links you through to this same textures used in Seal Beach. So this is all kind of ties things together. So wanted it to feel even bigger than just having it on the ground, so and actually wanted to make sure that visually it's kind of the lighthouse itself is something that you can spot in various different places, lots of different little sight lines that you can see the lighthouse in. So actually right as you come through the entrance you can see the lighthouse, but it's not too imposing. Actually it ends up being quite nicely balanced. So yeah, all of this is really about just getting that elevated in this tiny little space. So just kind of ended up with it being built up on rocks. It's up on this little kind of plinth, a sort of stone plinth, and then all this, what I'm using the Tega rocks here, but this is supposed to all end up looking like it's sort of fake rock, obviously not natural, not natural that it's there, and it just ends up actually really creating. And I've made a real conscious effort of doing this recently, is making a real conscious decision to sort of separate sections of the zoo out. So Seal Beach is like hidden now behind this big construction. So even when you're in the kind of capybaras, you get the sort of slightly the sense that you're moving from Penguin Point into Seal Beach, which we've not really had before. And just these sorts of both the kind of focal points to give you the that kind of weenie effect from where you are in the park to finding other bits and creating little points of interest and stuff. But as I said, also it gives you a way of just sort of separating sections off, which is kind of handy. So yeah, I've added all this stone in. I'm trying to sink in some of the moss pieces. Don't like the moss pieces that much. I find the green is always quite rich, but if you sink them into other textures like this, you can just get little bits of moss in there, here and there. As I said, I wanted it to look like it was fake and not the real rock, so blended back in some of the rubble pieces that I've used before, and some of the faux rocks, just to kind of soften it off again. And then you can see like that scale, that like false perspective, that was the word I was looking for before, that's just created by the door, and it all feeling actually bigger than it is because it's higher than you, all that sort of thing. So yeah, loads of these rubble pieces going in. Ended up cleaning this off a lot. I've used my own little set of these rubble pieces in so many different places of the zoo, and actually trying really hard to make sure that I go back and clean up the bits that are not visible, because piece count is really accumulating in Seal Beach, in Tiguidou in general. So we're getting there with this, and it's starting to I ended up actually, you can see me using a little bit of the terrain stamp there, just to put some terrain back into it so that I could get a bit more texture in there. Again, there was enough space to kind of be able to do that. So again, I wanted some real terrain in there, bit of foliage going in, just to obviously always is the way that once you start to add the foliage in and some bushes and stuff, it really kind of comes together and sells it. Not too much of this, because again, I don't want to break up the sight lines too much. So this is going to be, I think this is probably going to be the first video of a few different videos scattered here or there where I show you updates that I'm making to Seal Beach, and there's loads more to come. And obviously we are doing this all in order to kind of get towards the end of Tiguidou. We're not that far away. Big plans ahead, lots of different little pieces coming together. So yeah, we're not actually that far away, and I'm hoping that by the time Planet Coaster 2 comes out, if you haven't seen the announcement for that, that's something coming this year. Hopefully by the time that comes out, I've finished Tiguidou, and that will be one zoo finished in the whole of the history of the game, which would be amazing. So I hope you've enjoyed this one, guys. Just putting the finishing touches into this. There'll be a few little cinematics and things just so you can see it in context. And then once we've got a bit more done on this, I think we'll do a bit of a walking tour so you can see it all together. As ever, very much appreciate you watching and appreciate your patience for hanging around. I know the videos are always sporadic and random and don't come very often, but yes, very much appreciate. Don't forget to like and subscribe. My name is Toves, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.